Hi friends! In this watercolor tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to paint a watercolor floral composition. I will show you how I decide where to put the main flowers, where to add the leaves, how to choose the colors, and overall how I arrange the composition. I hope you will learn something from it and you will enjoy it. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through my ideas when I plan a watercolor flower composition. I have my Arches paper, 100% cotton. I have my Winsor & Newton watercolor paints, and I'm gonna be using mainly this filbert brush from Da Vinci. I might be using also a bit of this brush that is a size 6 from Princeton Heritage. When I approach a composition, I decide first where I want my main flowers to be, and in this case I'd like my main flowers to follow an S shape onto the paper. So I will be painting maybe the main flower here in the center left part of the paper, and then adding maybe some flowers or a big flower here on top of this corner on the right side, and then following the S shape, the second flower, the third flower should be here at the bottom. In this case, this watercolor composition is not gonna follow exactly the real colors in nature. In this case, I've decided to create the leaves in a blue color, but this is a sort of interpretation that I like to give quite often, I have to say, onto my paintings, where the colors are not necessarily the ones that we find in nature. The way I like to approach and to start this composition is to start from the main flower, this loose watercolor style peony. So I will start here onto the central left side. I'm gonna use my orange paint and I'm gonna mix it a bit with a small hint of blue, just because I want this orange to be not completely bright but a bit more dull, and blue and orange are opposite colors on the color wheel, so when you mix them together they become a bit more, the orange becomes a little bit more dull. So now with my brush, with the shape of this filbert brush, I really create the first strokes by letting the brush touch the paper, pressing and releasing. I always like to change the value of the color by removing the paint and adding water, and so I do the same with the side part of the brush, and I create in this way, I create the central part of my peony. I'm gonna add some more strokes, and while the paint is still wet, I can add more color, more orange color that is bleeding into the center part of this peony. In this way, giving these small strokes, I'm giving the impression of creating more petals, and then by adding a bit of red into the orange mixture, I'm gonna give more bleeding into these florals and letting the colors blend together. I think watercolor is about allowing the paint to come together with water, different colors, and letting these bleeding moments to happen. So this is one of the things that I like very much to do with watercolor. I add another orange flower with a touch of red in order to change a bit the hue of this second flower. Always quite orange, but with a more red hue. So I will have my second flower here, and I use the same way to create these strokes. Where I put the brush on the paper, press and release. While the paint is still wet, I add some red. Windsor, this is actually called Scarlet Lake, this red, and I add it where the paint is still wet. And I like here to add these other petals. And then just with a bit of water, I'm gonna create more petals here in the upper part of this peony. I can add a bit of orange because I like the idea of having a cohesive look between these two flowers on the paper. And I'm pretty satisfied with this, so I'm going to create another peony down below here, because as I said, I want the S shape of this composition and I want the eye of the observer to follow this S shape. So I'm gonna create another flower here. I try to change the hue. That means that I remove pigment by adding the brush into water and removing the pigment, having more water and giving these strokes then back onto paper. I like here to add a few strokes that are darker in color, in red color. And then I want this peony still to be orange, so I'm gonna add a few strokes like this. And then I remove pigment and with more water I do the strokes. I'm very happy with this. I think here there is a bit more space to create a smaller peony. Maybe as small as probably something like a bud, let's say. And so I will create it here. Maybe facing this side. Just with a few strokes. I am satisfied with this peony, with this collection of peonies, and I will start now to create the leaves. And to create the leaves, I'm gonna still use my filbert brush, and I'm going to create on my palette a bright blue paint by mixing phthalo turquoise and Prussian blue. And the way I want to create the leaves is simple, and I will just use a similar approach as for the petals by adding pressure and then release of the brush onto the paper. I will show you. First, I decide where I want these leaves to go, and then I do pressure and then release, pressure and release. I change the value of this blue and I create lighter leaves. I'm gonna have one that is much lighter here. And then I can always go back and add a darker blue where the paint is still wet. So these are very simple strokes with this brush, and the shape of the leaves is also very simple, and it fits the style of the peonies I'm creating. I will have some other leaves going more this side. I can have different pressure, more with the belly of the brush. And now it's a bit too light for what I wanted to achieve, so I can add a little bit of pigment afterwards. I can let the blue bleed in. And I can create these other leaves with very simple strokes. I can add a leaf here because I feel like it's missing. Smaller leaves here. And then I can add, for example, another branch of leaves here in the center. I use the side of this brush and I do pressure and release. Pressure and release. I feel I can add more leaves this side. I'm giving now a few strokes here in order to give the impression that there are leaves also in the back here. And then I will continue with other leaves in the bottom part of this composition. I like the idea of having something here. It's always pressure and release. Pressure and release. You can use the side of the brush to have thinner leaves, or you can use the whole belly to have a thicker leaf. You can add darker value of the blue to have darker leaves. And then I'm gonna add, I think, another one here. And some leaves that are exploding out of these peonies. I just follow a bit of my intuition where I want these leaves to be. At this point, I like how this composition is coming out. I like this S shape that is forming thanks to these peonies and the color combination of the orange and the blue sitting together. But I think we can add maybe some few buds in a yellow maybe color or more sort of ochre color that might sit quite well with the colors that we have, just because I think this can add a bit of brightness to this composition, these buds. And then if I look at the composition, you know, this can be still done with the filbert brush, just a few strokes this way. Mix with a bit of red because we were using the red before, and so it gives a bit of cohesiveness, cohesion. Then I can add more yellow flowers here. Then if I look really here, you know, just a few buds. And then maybe one more here. In order to make these flowers stand and come out of a branch, I can add maybe some branches in brown color. I like this burnt umber from Winsor & Newton. I can use my round brush, size 6, in order to create fine lines because the point of this brush is very fine and I like it for this sort of work. very fine line. They don't have to be too precise because this is a loose watercolor flower composition. And I like the idea that everything is loose. Maybe here we can add some more yellow flowers. So you see, I can decide where to put the flowers even afterwards. It doesn't have to be everything planned beforehand. While you're painting, you can decide where to add colors, flowers, buds. Is up to you and your artistic idea of how you want this composition to be. I'm gonna add a few more yellow buds. This one I'm gonna make them a little bit brighter. This way. And we can complete this composition by adding the center part of these peonies. Peonies have yellow centers, so with this round brush I can just create the center part by slightly touching the paper. I think this ochre, yellow ochre, is a perfect color for the center of these peonies, the way I'm imagining to be. And I think this composition is completed. I hope you liked this video, and if so, think about subscribing. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.